Hey, what is up, the Well Church family? My name is Adrian Parker, and this is the fourth episode of our Masterpiece video series where we're asking one simple question. How can we glorify God through our art? And how does glorifying God reveal his heart? One of the things we're learning is that we are all works of art. We are all God's work of art, but we all have good work to do. And so each week we are interviewing and learning a little bit about the stories of some of our very own family members. And today, y'all, I am so excited. I'm amped for this brother. I got to know him a little bit 3 years ago, first time at our men's retreat. And ever since then, it's been really cool to see his journey, his family, and I'm excited for everyone here to learn more about him. So I am talking about our very own, not just Derek Wright. He is Dr. Derek Wright. Derek, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and your family.
Hi there. So yeah, my name is Dr. Derek Wright. Um, I am a musician. I play French horn, classical French horn. So that means that I find myself playing mostly in different orchestras. So I have jobs with the Dallas Winds. We play down in Meyerson in downtown Dallas. So that's the main gig I do. I also have a job with the West Texas Symphony. We play once a month out in Midland, so that involves a little traveling. Um, and then the rest of my time playing is filled in with gigs. So that means being called to play as a sub with orchestras like Fort Worth or the Dallas Symphony or things like that. I have been playing since I was in high school. It actually makes me a little weird because most people start playing in middle school, but I was at a small private high school, and the band needed some French horn players, so I started as a sophomore in high school and fell in love with this. I don't really know how I ended up getting here because I don't match the profile of someone who would be a professional French horn player. I started late and then I applied for music school. I didn't have any lessons in high school, so I thought, okay, I just applied to music school without any real guidance. And I didn't understand that I had lots of gaps in my playing that would have prevented me from going to most of the schools I applied to. But I applied to the University of Illinois. I met the teacher there, and you know, he was honest with me. It was like, hey, you're not really at the level of making it into this studio, but I see you've only been playing for 2 years. I think you have a lot of potential. From there, I went on to get a master's degree at the University of Minnesota. And then I went on to get a doctoral degree at Arizona State. At the time of getting my doctoral degree, my thought was that I would apply for college teaching jobs, which is usually what you do with a doctoral degree. But I graduated at a very bad time, right in the middle of the Great Recession. So most universities were not hiring for teachers at that time. So I'm sitting here in Phoenix, Arizona, wondering what to do next with my life. There wasn't a big scene in Phoenix, so it was either take just a 9 to 5 job somewhere in Phoenix or do something radical. So my office mate from the year before went ahead and he had moved with his fiance out to Texas. And he told me, oh, there's lots of private teaching in Texas. Like you can build a big studio really easily. And so that's what I did. I decided to move to Texas, a place that I'd only been to once in my life before then, and where I only knew that one person. But I felt it was the right thing to do, and I felt God's calling in that. So speaking of my faith, I grew up as a Christian, but I did not take my faith seriously until I was in my late 20s. So throughout my life, if someone had said, what religion are you? I would have said, I'm a Christian. But I didn't really pay much attention to it or study it much or take it very seriously at all. I ended up going to a church in Arizona during my doctoral degree. Um, just on a lark, I went to this church service during Easter. A friend of mine invited me. They preached the gospel. And I felt that was the very first time in my life that I had heard and understood the gospel. I went ahead and joined that church and decided to devote my life to God. Back to what I was doing when I left, when I was finishing up my degree, I spent a lot of time praying in meditation and fasting to God because I did not really know what to do with my life. So I moved to Texas, um, got a church recommendation from someone at my previous church in Phoenix, and just went there. I moved to Dallas. I got plugged into to a new church. It was Watermark Community Church, the big mega church over in Dallas, which is also where I met my wife Casey, um, and started teaching students here in Texas. Although a few years in, I ended up, in another state where I'm asking God what to do. Is this my calling to lead music? Because I still loved music. I didn't want to give it up at all. But my freelancing career, playing in the Dallas area, was not going anywhere at that time. And I came and I started to learn some repair. And then one of the technicians had to step out for a little bit for some personal reasons. Uh, and I ended up being able to actually take a paid spot doing some repair there. And then I ended up pitching an idea. And I said, hey, I think I could make a website for this. And I think we could do more sales, if we had a website. So they say yes. I ended up, I said, okay, I'll charge you this much to build a website. And did that, built the website. I thought I would build the website and I would just be done and I would just go back to what I was doing. But the website started bringing in more and more business. So there wasn't really anyone to handle all of the business. So I started doing sales to people who would come by. And that just continued growing. And we ended up getting a few more brands, and that continued growing. And the business was still being operated out of my now business partner, but at that point, the owner's house. And we ended up getting a letter from the city of Keller. We had grown too big, and I think the neighbors had started to complain. But it had grown big enough that we were actually able to go ahead and buy a small converted house north of 1709 and continue doing business in. And at that point in time, it was around that time that I ended up becoming a partner in the business. Because we had grown it so much at this point, and at this point, I was doing so many of the sales and managing and stuff like that, that it was at a point where it just made sense. And since then, the business has grown many times over. Our building now is just a few blocks north of the well, so that big church on the corner of Elm and Hill Streets, which was formerly abandoned, is now our music shop. And
I didn't know it was right there. I passed by that all the time. So I knew you had a new building, but I didn't know it was like right down the street. So I'll definitely have to just check that out. That's congratulations. I feel like that's a big deal.
oh, it really was. It took us 2 years to renovate the building. But, now I'm proud to say that we are the largest brass shop in the nation. And we're one of the largest single store music stores in the United States.
Wow. So is this okay, we started this as a music instrumentation, the gift, because clearly, like, and I know your path, you sound like, hey, I had to work to get into, get my bachelor's and then master's and doctor of music. And it wasn't like you started off as a little kid that's always playing the horn. But so you have this musical talent and you have this teaching talent, even though maybe times it might have been not what you wanted to do full time, but there's teaching talent. But it sounds like this entrepreneurial talent though is there as well. How do you think about those things? Because those are all sorts of creativity. Playing music, sounds, selling musical instruments, entrepreneurship, and of course
Well,
teaching music.
Well, it means my life is very, very diverse, diverse at the moment. It's been a lot, with the music shop because it's grown so much now that we are nationally known. And so that takes up a lot of my time and attention. But I still really feel drawn to creativity. And I've always felt that, you can look to the Bible to find out why God has put us on this earth. And God has put us on this earth to worship Him. So to me, worship has always been adding beauty to His creation. So taking a look at the world He's given us, and it is a great world full of beauty. And then through tasks just like architecture, art, music, we use our own creativity and God-given talents to, you know, to add to that beauty. It's kind of like the spark of God within us, the creativity.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
I've always fought against the notion, all jobs are important. But I feel a lot of times in today's society, we kind of go towards like, okay, let's look at the STEM, let's look at computer programming and business and engineering and health, that all these other very essential skills and tasks. But then we never step back and ask to what end, just
Ooh, yeah.
just so that we can just continue to live, or is it so that we can do something to worship God with?
Well, I think you hit on such a great point because oftentimes we evaluate our careers, ourselves, and our own personal value through the lens of utility. We're creating and producing something for someone else or serving, which are not unimportant or bad at all. We need those things. But I think to your point, the consequence of that sometimes is we diminish gifts that might be more like performance oriented, or we diminish things that you just do for the glory of God, or things that are that might seem like a luxury. I remember I was having the conversation with a friend a few years ago talking about like I was trying to write more, and I kind of made this offhand comment, right, that it was, oh, writing's a luxury, like, that's the first world problem. I need to really focus on like traditional work, like that you would, like you described. And she was like, no, historically people valued, and like cultures, and throughout history have valued artists. They valued musicians, they valued writers, they valued creative because they had more of a well-rounded kind of purposeful view of those things. And I think you make such a great point. I'm curious for you though, because when you play, and if you haven't heard Derek play, you must. You're in for a treat. But also he has all these videos on YouTube where he's teaching instrumentation, acoustics. He's teaching about the French horn, and so there's this teaching gift that is undeniable. But I'm curious for you, Derek. Have you ever sensed God's maybe presence while you're playing, or through a sound? Has it become more than maybe a musical moment? It's became maybe a soulful moment in the midst of playing, or something that you've been a part of?
Oh yeah, many times through that time while I was, working at the business, I kept practicing. Kind of ran into a lot of, roadblocks where showing like, okay, this was an issue that never really got addressed. Well, I need to work here. I need to work here. And let me tell you, practicing while life is going on and business is going on and family is going on is very, very difficult. But through it all, I started to get better. And as I got better, I felt like I started to feel God more in my playing. As I kind of felt that I'm putting out something creative that, you know, I'm I'm proud of, I feel like it was also something worthy of God. I'm not saying that music or dance or art or anything has to be up to a certain level of being worthy for God, but I think for me, I have to put a certain effort into it. Like, so it's partly if I'm worshiping God, if I'm throwing my all into this music or this piece or anything like that.
That's good. Well, question on that, because you audition and you are ranked and reviewed and hired for shows based on excellence and performance. You're even like you go from a third horn to second horn to first horn based on being excellent and predictable performance. How do you handle the pressure to be excellent and perform with the getting your value from your creator? Does that ever seem like it's in conflict at times?
I would say it is in conflict when and I'll admit to doing this in the past where I put excellence in my art above my other God-given responsibilities. So responsibility to church, responsibility to family, responsibility to my wife, those kinds of things. Because then I feel like it's taking that gift and it becomes a corruption of that gift. When I let that overtake all of my time, all of my emotion, and all of my energy at the sacrifice of other things in my life.
And I guess speaking of that, like, so you're a, you know, husband to Casey, you're a father to Harriet and Leonard, and so you have like these humans, right, that are a part of your life, and you're raising future adults. Are either of your kids into instrumentation or music yet, or show any inclination early?
Well, my daughter Harriet is learning piano, and it took her a year to really get into it, but she's starting to really get into it and enjoy practicing. But really, with my family, I my family is not even one. It's the greatest gift that has ever been given to me, and I guess I did not realize how important family was until I had a family, and then I take a look at my two children and I see that no matter what else I'm doing, it's my responsibility to make sure that these kids grow up well, that they grow up happy, and most importantly, they grow up worshiping God. So I
Mm,
hope whatever they do, that they find, that they find a great way to worship God. You know, if that's through music, great. If that's through dance, that's also great. If that's through art or writing or speaking or whatever that is.
yeah,
So
that's good.
that's all I hope for them, to find something that they would like to worship God with, and then to not take it halfway, to put their all into it.
Speaking of worship, that's such a great point. Because music and art can be healing. Music can be worship, and worship can be a weapon, you know, to help your mental and your even physical. And some of the research on music therapy and the effect of different songs and music on our social and mental health is just, you know, it's breathtaking. Is there something you hope people experience when you play? You know, have you ever thought of that? Like, what do you have a hope that people yeah, I guess experience, or there a message that you try to deliver when you play maybe
I
certain
hope
pieces?
I hope that I'm having them feel some sort of emotion. If it's a sad or tragic song that they are feeling, that they can feel that sadness, or, if it's a happy song that they feel joy. If it's a stately song, that they can feel majesty in that, um, in that point. And I've learned through my many years of playing, if I don't feel it while I'm playing, the audience will never feel it. So that comes back down to the craft and the practice, and why you have to take so much time to practice. You have to like really put yourself in that state in order to convey it, in order to make the music more than just notes.
Yeah. Wow. And you made me think of Addie Russell, our very own Addie Russell, obviously, just graduating high school, about to go to college. She's a French horn player. I think she's gotten some music scholarships. So I wonder, for you, any advice you would give to aspiring artists, not just musicians, but artists, as you look back on your journey, because you had someone who kind of handpicked you and said, "Hey, like you're not quite where you need to be, but I can get you there. So that's such a great part of your story. I assumed honestly when we were going to do this interview that you were born with a French horn in your hand. You were a musical prodigy from age 2. You were a virtuoso, and of course, you have a doctorate in music because it's all you've been doing. But this story has helped me understand how much more rounded and nuanced that story is. I feel like you have so much to give to probably aspiring creatives and musicians. So yeah, any advice or encouragement you would share with them?
I would say learn from as many sources as you can. Beware of anyone who says that they have all the answers and you only need to listen to me. Because I've ran into people like that, and I think that is just not not correct. Seek out not only advice from your teacher, but from other teachers. Seek out advice from people on the internet, although be very wary because there's also a lot of bad advice on the internet. Um, read read as many books as you can, listen to as many recordings as you can. Just be hungry for knowledge because it seems like and I think this applies to any art form. It seems like it's on the surface it's a simple thing to do. You learn how to create good sounds and put one note after the other. You learn how to paint onto a canvas and just shade and do things correctly. But as you get into it, it's really a lifetime of learning. I fully believe I will be learning more and more about music and my craft and improving my craft until the day I cannot physically hold the horn anymore. And I think if you're doing it right, you'll find that there's so much depth into the art, into art, that you'll continue finding more and more and more and more to learn as you go on. And if at any time you ever feel like, hey, this isn't for me, don't fall into the sunk cost fallacy, because that's another thing I've seen a lot of other people do. They continue along a path that God is not calling them towards anymore or calling them to make a change. But they're like, well, I got these degrees in music, and I put all this time into it. I can't stop it now. I can't stop it now because I've put so much time into it. No, but listen, pray and listen to God, and if God is telling you it's time to stop, stop and don't look back.
Wow. Pray, listen to God, seek out wise advice. Be careful of anyone who says they have all the answers. That is not just good encouragement for your career or your musical or artistic journey. That is just good news for life. Thank you so much, Derek, for sharing yourself, but your story. It's just an amazing journey and a reminder of how good God is.